All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. We so often fall into the trap of thinking about history strictly as this timeline, just a list of dates, names, and empires rising and falling. But if we really want to grasp why things happened the way they did, we literally have to look at the ground beneath their feet. The physical geography of the ancient world wasn't just some static map in the background, it was an incredibly active participant in shaping human history. To really wrap our heads around ancient events, we've got to start by defining geography as the physical chessboard, right? And history, well, that's the game that actually plays out on it. Think of geography as the spatial dimension. It's the permanent structure of the board. The mountains, the rivers, the deserts, they literally dictate where the pieces can even move. History, on the other hand, is our temporal dimension. It's the succession of events, the strategy, the split-second decisions people make as they navigate that exact physical space over time.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 5 key areas. First, the space-time chessboard. Second, the ancient superpowers. Third, the land between. Fourth, rivers versus rain. And finally, we'll wrap up with a west to east tour. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Space-Time Chessboard. This idea really hits the nail on the head. Where you live fundamentally dictates how you live, and the exact historical challenges your society is going to face. Think about it in a modern context for a second. If you grew up in a tightly packed urban corridor, your lifestyle, your culture, your whole worldview is probably vastly different from someone who grew up out in the isolated, rugged mountains, right? Things like population density, resource availability, the actual terrain, they shape a culture. Well, the exact same rule applies to the ancient world. The board absolutely shapes the players.
Moving on to Section 2, the ancient superpowers.
Now, we can't really understand the struggles of smaller nations without first looking at the massive forces surrounding them. We're looking at 3 major loci of power here: Mesopotamia up to the northeast, Egypt down to the southwest, and Anatolia to the north. Now, these sprawling empires were separated by these formidable, almost totally impassable barriers. We're talking about the harsh, waterless Arabian desert and the massive Mediterranean Sea. And look, because human nature basically always wants more resources, more land, these empires were constantly flexing their military muscles, constantly looking to expand their reach and grab resources they didn't already have.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the stark contrast between how these empires actually survived. Up in Mesopotamia, they relied heavily on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. But man, these rivers were tough to deal with. They flooded unpredictably, they silted up all the time, and they caused salt to build up in the soil. It required constant, exhausting canal work and dredging just to survive. But then, look at Egypt. The Nile River flowed south to north with just incredible regularity. Every single year, it predictably flooded, dropping this incredibly rich, fertile silt. No crazy rapids, which made travel and communication a total breeze. Honestly, the Nile was so reliable and productive, it was literally worshipped as a deity. Egypt became the absolute breadbasket of the ancient Near East, which, as you can guess, made it a massive target for those Mesopotamian empires looking to expand.
Which brings us to Section 3, the land between.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that sitting right smack in the crosshairs of these massive powers is this tiny, super vulnerable land bridge. Israel functioned as the ultimate land between. It was essentially a strategic testing ground of faith, where survival meant dealing with constant pressure from literally every possible direction. Look at how they were squeezed. First, geographically. Sea traffic was super limited, and the desert was basically impassable for armies. So if Mesopotamia wanted to attack Egypt or vice versa, their armies literally had to march straight through this narrow little land bridge. Geopolitically, squeezed again, because every single superpower wanted to control this area as a buffer zone. And culturally, squeezed yet again. You had cosmopolitan invaders coming from the west, like the Philistines, and semi-nomadic raiding groups coming out of the eastern deserts, like the Midianites. There was just no escaping the pressure.
But it wasn't just a geopolitical buffer. It was also a land caught right between completely different climate belts. It sits perfectly on the margins of the Fertile Crescent, caught right between the cool, moist influence of the Mediterranean Sea and the hot, brutal aridity of the desert.
And that leads us right into Section 4, rivers versus rain. Unlike those superpowers that relied on mighty, constant rivers, the land between had a totally different survival strategy. And honestly, this geographical quirk completely altered the psychology of the people living there. While the big empires relied on their predictable rivers, the people of the land between depended almost entirely on volatile, unpredictable rainfall. Farming there was basically a constant leap of faith. I mean, in Egypt, you knew the Nile was going to flood. You had water. Simple. But in Israel, there's no massive river watering those high elevations. Instead, they had to rely on a rainy season, which hopefully showed up between November and April, and some heavy summer dew. If the rain didn't come, famine. Period. It created an environment where people felt entirely 100% dependent on the heavens for their basic survival. This step-by-step weather pattern dictated absolutely everything about where these ancient communities could actually thrive and farm. Let's trace it out. It's pretty fascinating. First, you've got moist air sitting over the Mediterranean Sea. Then the prevailing winds push that humid air eastward. Now, right in the middle of this land bridge is a central mountain range running north to south. As that wet air hits the mountains, it's forced up where it cools off and dumps all its precipitation right there on the western slopes. But once those clouds finally crest the peaks and move down the eastern side, they are completely dried out. This creates this drastic rain shadow effect, literally just miles away from perfectly fertile farmland. All right, let's move to section 5, a west to east tour. For this final part of the explainer, let's take a physical walk across this chessboard and see the topography up close. Moving strictly from west to east across this tiny strip of land, we cross 5 drastically different topographical zones in super rapid succession. We start right at the water, with the coastal plain, move inland to the Shephelah, or foothills, climb way up into the steep hill country, descend into the arid wilderness, and finally, just plummet into the deep Rift Valley. Notice how the flat, super easy-to-conquer coastal plain contrasts with those rolling foothills of the Shephelah. The coastal plain is, well, flat and level. This means it's incredibly easy to travel across, making it the prime real estate for large cosmopolitan cities. This is exactly where the Philistines set up shop. But as you move just slightly east, you hit the Shephelah. That's a Hebrew word meaning lowlands. These are low, rolling foothills, and because they stand right between the flat coast and the mountains, they act as this absolutely crucial buffer zone. In fact, many famous ancient battles, like David and Goliath in the Elah Valley, happened exactly right here in this transition zone as enemies desperately tried to push their way inland. As we climb higher into the hill country, the terrain just completely changes. We find this highly protected, isolated region full of steep, V-shaped valleys. You definitely can't just march an invading army easily through this stuff. It's super protected. And remember that western slope we talked about? Because it sits there, it catches all the rain. The eroding limestone creates this incredibly fertile red soil known as terra rossa. Plus, the limestone naturally forms these horizontal terraces. It was absolutely perfect for ancient families to cultivate small plots of dates, figs, grapes, and olives. This right here was the true heartland for the ancient Israelites. But just over the crest of those mountains, the rain stops entirely. This is that rain shadow effect in full action. Suddenly, all that lush red soil is just gone, replaced by a harsh, dry, barren wilderness. But you know, this geography served a vital historical purpose. Because it was so harsh and so isolated, it was the perfect place to hide. This is exactly where historical figures like David fled when he was on the run from King Saul, and it's the exact same environment where Jesus faced his temptation in the biblical narratives. The geography literally provided the isolation. Now, as we keep walking east, the ground literally just drops away into the Rift Valley. It plummets to 1,300 feet below sea level, right at the surface of the Sea of Salt, making it the lowest point on the entire Earth. To put that into perspective, the hill country we were literally just standing in, near Jerusalem, is about 2,500 feet above sea level. Just 12 miles away, you hit the north end of the sea, and you are 1,300 feet below sea level. It is a stunning, just radical drop in the Earth's surface. And to really give you an idea of the sheer scale of this geological marvel, core samples reveal a staggering 25,000 feet of sediment accumulated beneath the waters of that sea. Let that sink in. Before scientists even hit bedrock underneath that dead, salty water, they have to drill through 25,000 feet of material that has just washed down into this massive cleft over millennia. It's a profound reminder of the massive, ancient geological forces that constructed this entire chessboard. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. If geography is the physical chessboard that dictates the entire flow of ancient history, how does the physical space you inhabit today shape the temporal dimension of your own life? Think about it. The weather, the landscape, the physical barriers in your own city or town. History isn't just dates and names. How much of your own story is secretly being written by the geography right outside your window? The chessboard is absolutely still dictating the game. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating source material. Stay curious, take a fresh look at the ground beneath your feet today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.